This
Fine.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so let us review the, as I said, let us review the how the ledger got created after importing this setup from the rapid implementation spreadsheet, right? Just go to the task, manage primary ledgers, and look for, search for your ledger with the name. And if you can see, the ledger is created with the status as completed, right? Even the balances cube is also got created, which means while creating your configurations manually, so you need to submit once the ledger is created. Once the ledger is created, then we will be assigning the legal entries and balancing segment values, right? Once that is done, what you do, review accounting configurations, review and submit accounting configurations for ledger, right? That is the task that you do, that you perform, right? By that, the ledger, the balances cubes gets created, as well as the ledger status will marked as completed, right? Even that is also taken care by the ledger, sorry, that is also taken care by the rapid implementation spreadsheet, which means what happens is whatever the manual configuration that we did so far, majority of them gets created automatically by the spreadsheet itself. Okay, let us go and check this specify ledger options, what options got defaulted on the ledger level, right? So the first period, open first period, the first period it got defaulted from the accounting calendar because the calendar started from the Jan 23. If you remember if you remember the first fiscal year start date, I guess I could not remember the exact string, but at the header level we have given the date as 1st Jan 23. That is how it come. The first period is being derived. And if you look at this retained earnings account, how come application picked only the exact retained earnings account, right? So there is an logic. I mean, even this is also handled by Oracle. While importing your, while creating your configurations, application looks for the account, whether the retained earnings account is defined in the spreadsheet or not. Okay, so what it will do, it will pick up the right retained earnings account from the application, from the spreadsheet, and it updates that account back in the application at ledger level. Okay, so rest all are the default options, right? So similarly, we haven't changed anything, right? No, no. Similarly, you can even go and check the legal entities, assign balancing segment values to legal entities. Let us go and check the whether the balancing, what are balancing segment values got assigned. Can you see the company legal entity is being assigned and the respective company code also got assigned? How come this mapping is provided in the companies and the legal entities tab? While updating the company details, to the right side corner we have given the corresponding legal entity, right? Depends upon that legal entity name, the corresponding balancing segment value from the company codes got picked and it updated over here. Okay, so what else we do as part of the legal entity, right? So balancing segment values we have seen. Fine. So let us go back to the ledger is fine. So this is how it gets updated at ledger level, and those configurations we have already validated. We have just seen from the ledger perspective. Let us go and see the business unit.
Yeah, Tirupati, legislative data group.
Yeah, I'll come back to that one. While creating the user, I'll come back to that. Legislative data group, it's not gets created. You need to do it manually. Okay. So while, so this is the business unit, it got created. Just go and view at the business group level. So the business group got created with the common set. Have we given any common set, any set details, the reference data set details while we in the spreadsheet? We haven't given any reference data set details in the spreadsheet, but it has taken the common set, which means by default application, well, the rapid implementation sheet is going to use the common reference data set. Okay, the limitation, one of the major limitations we can say from the by using the reference data set is that you cannot use the custom reference data sets, right? Even the location also not created. You need to create this location update manually. Even though it is optional, it may not stop you from booking the transaction, at least from the GL and subledgers APR. But when you try to import the employee expenses, at that time you should see some hiccups while importing the transactions into AP, saying that the location doesn't exist for this business unit. All right, let us check the other business unit. So it should also be same, right? Configuration is similar. We have given two business units in the spreadsheet, and two business unit got created, right? So from here, what I did, uh, I've I have completed the AP setups. The one more thing, assign business unit business functions also got created for the business unit by enabling all the functions. By default, all the business unit functions gets enabled at the business unit level while when you are using your rapid implementation sheet. Okay, so if you wish the business unit is not going to perform all the business functions, it limited to certain business functions, then you need to come back here and update manually. Maybe you, if you wish, you can deselect, you can do that as well. Okay, fine. So okay, so from here business unit business functions are updated. So what I did from here, so what I did is, so far for Apple business unit, I did configure the common options, manage common options, which I did manually. Okay, and similarly I have even updated the invoice options, right? This we already discussed, right? As well as the payment options, right? And also I did create the managed procurement agent. Okay, so what is the prerequisite to create a procurement agent? Anyone?
Initially create a employee.
Correct, correct. So for that, what I did, I've since we have so far, my user was not an employee user. This user was an security console user, implementation user. Okay, so what I did, I have created a user, an employee user, right? By by using the linking process, right? Because my Apple user, it is assigned with the implementation consultant as well as the IT security manager, and this is well available in my application I have used. So since I have the option to link the my implementation user, converting that user as a managed user, employee user, I have the option, so I have used that. How do you do that? Link user option, you go here, right? You'll be going here and give the corresponding link, corresponding user account which you want to link, right? So once you do that, then the person type you will be assigning and legal employer and business unit. But here you will see an issue while selecting your legal employer. What is that error is, once you select the user, what is that? Let me create a legal user for the other legal entity. right? So what happens is the LDG, legislative data group, is not created automatically by the spreadsheet functionality. You need to do that. You need to that do that configuration manually for creating a user. Okay, so let us see what is the issue you will be getting. Right, go here and select your legal entity. See, no legislative data group is associated with this legal employer since select a different legal employer. Okay, so what you need to do, you need to create the legislative data group and assign that legislative data group to the legal entity which you are going to create from your spreadsheet, right? So hope everyone knows how to create a legislative data group and how to assign that one. See, I have done the legislative data group configuration for apply and see it is not showing the error. Okay, now we have reached we have reached till the point last we discussed on the supplier side as well, right? So once the employee is created, then you will be able to convert that employee as a procurement agent, right? Once the procurement agent activity is done, then you can create a supplier, right? To create a supplier, what you need, what role you need? How
Supply
come this
manager.
procurement how come this procurement infotile gets enabled? By assigning a role which is supplier manager. What I did, once the employee user is created and once the employee user is created, I converted that user as an procurement agent. Once the procurement agent activity is done, then what I did, I came back to the security console and assigned the supplier manager role so that the procurement infotile gets enabled. One of the privilege that gets enabled for me is the create the supplier, right? So just go into the suppliers work area and task panel, create a supplier. This is how you create your supplier and supplier the rest of the process, right? The supplier which I created is the BHEL one, right? This is the supplier I created. This is the supplier I created, and these are the address of the supplier, and this is the site, and the site is already being assigned to the Apple USB so that we are now done till the supplier site creation. So what is the next job is the configurations are done now. Okay, so from an application perspective, application is ready to book the transactions. So how come the user can book the transactions now, right? Can the user go and access the accounts payables info tile? Let us go and check, because we haven't created the right we haven't created the, let's see what access it gives. It should not give any access, right? So one how a user gets access to the subledger? By assigning a role, right? So this user, whether this user is assigned with this payables role or not, we'll see. Once the role is assigned, what we need to do? Once the role is assigned, what we need to do? We need to provide the data access, right?
Yes, sir.
How come this access is getting provided? Okay, okay. So can anyone answer why? How come this list of values we have discussed this one? How come these business units are getting displayed here? Okay, so let me come out through the process, and there are a few of the attendees from this topic is new to them. Okay, so let us come through the flow, and then we'll discuss why the why that is coming. Okay, so once the user is available, once the user is available in the database, the next job is the user has to perform certain transaction or certain duties in any of the subledger as part of his duty, right, as part of his job responsibilities. Let us say the user Apple user is has to perform the accounts payables processes. What is that? What are the jobs that you will be doing as part of accounts payables? What Oracle offers as part of accounts payable? The user can create the invoices. The user can also make the payments on the invoices, right? So there are the invoice work area, invoice workbench we call. Invoice workbench has various types of invoice transactions, and also each invoice goes into each invoice will have certain steps to be followed. What are those steps we'll discuss, but the maybe it's an approval process, maybe the invoice has to be validated, maybe the invoice has to be accounted. There are certain prerequisite step processes that needs to be followed in Oracle. Okay, so the Apple user has to create invoices for the business unit Apple USBU. Okay, so how come the user Apple can access to AP related work area for this business unit? Okay, so as we discussed in the initial phase itself, okay, each of this subledger access is driven by a role, right? So what Oracle is giving as the out of the box functionality is there are certain roles given in the Oracle which can be used by the consultant to assign the user so that the user can go and perform the certain transactions which gets accessed by the assigning the role. Okay, let us say the accounts pay invoice and accounts payables, right? So what are the roles that Oracle gives as an out of the box for invoice performance, invoice related transactions that the user can perform? Okay, accounts payable, invoice supervisor if I'm not wrong. Okay, there is an so what this see there are various roles in general. What happens is as part of the security, as per the SOX compliance, generally the companies what they do is for certain users they'll be giving access only to the invoice work area where the user will not be able to make any payments. Okay, and there will be in the similar way there will be a group of users or the user who is going to perform only the payments, who can perform only the payments transaction, but that user will not be able to access to the invoice work area because it is just to avoid, it is just a kind of security layer to avoid so that the same user can create an invoice, make the payment, right? Though there's kind of an what do you call, frauds can be reduced, right? So the even that security is also handled in Oracle by way of giving a different role for invoice work area, different role for payments work area, which means even the payments module also will have its own role, right? And also there will be a manager role, accounts payable manager role, right? Let us go and see all these roles. So what the bottom line is, to be able to perform the transactions in AP, whether it is an invoice or payments, the user should have the corresponding role in first place. Okay, so let us assign the role first. And so once the role is, let us say once the role is assigned, assume that this role we have assigned in the application, right? So the user Apple, by using the role accounts payable invoice supervisor, he can create the transactions, but on which business unit, for which business unit, right? It doesn't mean that the by using the role, the user will not user is user can user should access to the all the business unit, and he should be able to perform transaction for all business units, right? It doesn't mean that is the approach it should work, right? Even for GL also, we have provided the data access, manage data access for user, the task that we used, and the data access type what we used, what value we have assigned to the user. For general accountant role, what is the data access that we provided in GL, so that the user can
Rep,
perform the
ledger,
journal.
ledger,
Ledger name,
ledger.
data access set, that is the value that we provide. The ledger name, with the ledger name, the default data access set gets created, so the same we have assigned, right? Similarly, if the Apple is the user who has to perform the Apple US business unit transactions, then this user has to be assigned with the payables role first place, and then the user has to give the user has to be provided with the data access to provide the data access should be provided to the respective business unit, so that the user can go and create the transactions or the invoices for that specific business unit. Okay, so let us go back to the security console, and we'll see what are the roles assigned. I think this user even doesn't have the GL roles as well. So we'll assign the GL roles as well as accounts payables roles, and we'll provide the data access to the user. Even we need to open the periods as well, right? So the role is already assigned. That is why we were able to see the info trails. Okay. General accountant, accounting manager, accounts payable specialist, supervisor, and accounts payable specialist, accounts payable supervisor. Just let me check what are the roles. Let me remove these roles and assign the roles, right? General accountant. Okay, so this user is not now is assigned with the application implementation consultant and the supplier manager role, right? So now we have to assign the accounts payables related roles as well as the general account GL roles. Okay, let us search for the payables roles first. See, accounts payables invoice supervisor is the role which gives access to the user to invoice workbench. Okay, and accounts payables manager role also we would be requiring, because we need to open the period as well, right? So let us assign the manager as well. Okay, so okay, so from the accounts payables I have assigned only the invoice workbench related invoice related role right now. Okay, so I haven't assigned the accounts payables manager, accounts payables uh, payments, accounts payables payment related role, because once we create the invoice transactions, then we'll come back here and we'll assign the payments related role and we'll proceed further. So we'll assign the general accountant, general accounting manager, right? Fine. So we have assigned the GL and payables roles which are required for us to proceed further. Let me provide the data access. So we have uh, created the user is assigned with the role, and now it is our job to provide the data access. For GL roles, we will provide the ledger name. For AP roles, we'll provide the business unit, right? Manage data access for users is the task, right? Just create Apple role. Let me first assign the GL related. Right? Apple US is my uh, data access. Okay. General accountant, general accounting manager, data access set, Apple US. Fine. Now I'm proceeding further to provide the data access to the accounts payables role. So what is my security context here? So the Apple user has to book transactions for the business unit Apple USBU, right? The security context should be your business unit here. Okay, just select the corresponding business unit from the list of values. So for GL, the security context will be assigning the data access set for the subledgers, whatever the accounts, maybe it is accounts payables or maybe it's accounts payables or maybe it is accounts receivables. For those modules, the security context should be your business unit, because the account, all these subledger works at business unit level, right? Even we are updating the configurations at the business unit level only, right? So which means this is a logical organization where the access can be restricted at the org level, org organization which is business unit. Okay, just save and close.
Yeah, Tirupati, what are the roles? I mean, you assign the two roles for the for invoice. What are the roles? Please tell me once again.
Accounts payable, I have
Just
written over here, right?
okay,
Accounts
okay,
payable
okay,
invoice supervisor,
okay,
accounts payable, uh, accounts payables manager. These are the two roles which I have assigned. The payments
okay,
related role I haven't assigned, because once we complete the invoice transaction, then we'll proceed further for the payments. Okay, so at
okay,
that time
okay,
we will assign the payments related.
okay.
Okay, now once the since this is a new ledger, right, we should open the periods, right? So the status, the period status is never open. We should open the periods, GL periods, as well as the payables period. Why the GL period should be open when we are working on accounts payables? Our job right now is to create the invoices in AP, right? So why the GL period has to be in open status?
Later that are imported to G. That's right.
Exactly. So whatever the transactions you create in AP, The transaction in return, it creates an accounting entry, right? Those accounting entries we call as journals in Oracle. Those journals needs to be booked into one of the primary ledger, right? So where one of the primary ledger, because your accounts are maintained in your primary ledger, right? Whatever the companies and the accounts, the natural account segment values, the product segment departments, which is the combination of ledger, right? So the ledgers are maintained in your GL. So which means GL is the central hub for your uh, Oracle application. So wherever you book the transactions, the transaction in return is going to generate a journal, and that journal is going to hit into primary ledger. The primary ledger is part of your general ledger module. So the corresponding ledger period also should be in open status. Otherwise, the journal import will fail. Okay, that is the reason we open the period, a period which is open in subledger. I think it is March, right? Okay. March 23 is open. Now I need to open the AP periods, right? Why it is not showing? Okay, let me go back to the AP module. From here, open the period. Right, the first period is Jan. Okay, so now we should open the target period. The March one we should open, right? Fine. You can check if the March period is open. It is not yet open, it seems. Yes, the March period is open. You can see the book with pencil button, right? So, which means the the current period is the March one, and the previous period is the Feb one, which are all open. Okay. For the payables also, we have done with the period opening till the March. Now the application is available for us to book the transactions. Okay. So since we have provided the role and the data access, so once the role is data access is provided, this is how your payables info tile looks like. Okay. So once you are provided with the once the payables is provided, can someone go on with this? Yes. So the payables, broadly, as we discussed, the payables has uh, two workbenches. One is the invoice and the other one is the payment. So broadly, the payables, guys, if you are not speaking, I request you to please go on. So the payables work area broadly is divided into uh, two sub processes. One is the invoice and the other one is the payments. Okay, so what does the invoice workbench will do? What does the payments workbench will do? Invoice workbench gives you access to the user to create various invoice transaction types. There are different invoice transaction types that exist in the business that exist in the Oracle applications. For each of the invoice transaction type serves for the specific business purpose. Okay, so once the invoice is created, there are certain steps which needs to be followed as part of the invoice creation process, invoice completion process. Okay, that entire process is going to be done in the invoice workbench. Okay, so this is the invoice workbench. Okay, what does the payments workbench is? Payments workbench is used to make the payments for the invoices which are completed in the which are completed with the process. When I say process, there are certain process that is certain process steps which needs to be followed to be able to make that invoice is complete. Okay, what are those? We'll see while creating the invoice. Okay, but once to create an invoice, you should click on the invoice workbench area, invoice work area. Okay, once you click over there, it takes you to the screen. What you can see on the right now, what you can see on my screen. Okay, these these call we call as an invoice info tiles, the invoice dashboards, where the invoices will be categorized into different grids. Okay, different buckets, and each of this bucket will show you the invoices which falls under the respective bucket. Okay, so there is an first one is the scanned invoice. So what does this scanned invoice is? Basically, the invoices can be created by various sources in Oracle. Okay, one is the annual invoice, which you can create from the application UIs, right? Another way is uh, imported invoice. So this imported invoice can be various from the various categories. Maybe import invoice you can import from spreadsheets, right? Maybe invoice can be imported from BDI sheets, which is another way of creating your invoices, right? And maybe the invoices can be created. What I can write it is an automatic invoices. So by defining certain configurations, by defining certain processes as a consultant in the application, the invoices can be created automatically. Okay, what are those? Maybe the recurring invoices, right? Or uh, recurring invoices, maybe you can create, as well as you can one-time supplier invoices. One-time supplier invoices we call as one-time payments generally. Okay? And you can even create the invoice, the info tile, the uh, what we see on the screen is scanned invoice, right? Scanned invoice is a functionality. Basically, it is an additional subscription required from the Oracle applications, Oracle Corporation. Okay, to use this scanned invoice functionality, the customer has to go for an additional subscription where the customer has to pay additional license fee to Oracle, so that once the subscription is done, then what Oracle will give as an option is it gives an dedicated email ID. Okay, so what this process will do is, assume you got an image file, PDF file, or whatever the file you get from the supplier, right? The invoices, you'll be getting this invoice from the supplier, right? So whatever we are going to create the invoice over here in your application, this invoice is going to be created based on one physical or whatever the email communication, whatever the, based on the information only, you are creating an invoice inside of your application, right? So the supplier, whatever the procurement activity you have done from the supplier is going to provide an invoice. Based on that invoice, you are going to create the invoice, and supplier invoice inside of your application. Okay, so once the supplier gives you an invoice, an image or a PDF invoice, that invoice file, you can send that file to Oracle given email ID. Okay, let us say Oracle has given some apple dot something at the rate oracle.com. Then assume that this is the email ID. Okay, so once you send the file to this email ID, what Oracle will do is, Oracle, there is an auto, this is an automate process again. So Oracle have developed an application where it can read the image files or PDF files and create an invoice, and that invoice will be sent back to your application. These are the, if you click on this info tile, the scanned invoice, so you can see the all these invoices. These invoices are actually got created from the scanned invoice functionality. Okay, if you can go and open the invoice, one of the invoice, and see how the physical invoice looks like, right? So as I said, the invoice,
Tirupati,
basically the supplier invoice you are going to create based on the one of the supplier invoice file, right? So you can see that invoice in the attachments. Whatever, what Oracle will do is, once you send this invoice to the given dedicated email ID, what Oracle will do is it processes that file, and out of that file it creates this invoice, this whatever you see on your screen. This entire details are populated by Oracle itself. Okay, and it sends back that invoice to you with the invoice details as an attachment as well. Okay, you can go and open the physical attachment and compare whether the invoice is created properly or not. Okay, and this invoice, whatever is going to be created, is an incomplete invoice. If you can, you see the status, it is an incomplete invoice where you need to perform certain actions. Okay, so this is one of the way how the invoice image functionality works actually. Okay, let this attachment get open, and we'll see the compare this invoice, and we'll move to the next topic on that one. Okay, so basically the objective is, invoice also gets created by Oracle, for which the customer has to go for an additional subscription. And once the subscription is done, you will be given an email ID for which you need to send the PDF files or your image files. Once the file is sent, within a period of max of 5 minutes, the draft invoice, an incomplete invoice will be created, and it will be available for you to import inside of your Oracle payables, so that the invoice can be taken further process. Okay, so this was the invoice we were trying to open, right? So this is the file.
Tirupati, here
So
creation means invoice booking, right?
yes, this is the invoice booking. Yes,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay, so this is how the physical invoice you will be getting from the from your supplier. Okay, so based on this invoice details, based on this, these are the invoice details, right? This is the ABC Consulting ship to vision operations, right? From this invoice image file, this invoice is got created, invoice is got booked inside of your Oracle application with these details. Okay, so but as a process, what you need to do for this scanned invoices, there are certain process you need to provide the distributions, right? So this you will understand better once we see the standard invoice booking process. Okay, but just understand that uh, there is a info tile on your dashboard, invoice dashboard, scanned invoice. What is the purpose is to this, the scanned invoice info tile purpose is to get you the details, invoice details, scanned invoice details, which gets created with the help of Oracle. Okay, which is invoice scanned invoice imaging functionality that we call in generally in Oracle. Okay, so so the next what you have on the next is the recent invoices. What it will show is, it will gives you the, once you click over there, whatever the info tile you select, whatever the bucket, whatever the pool you select, right? It once you select that one, the corresponding info tile related information is going to be displayed in at the bottom of your invoice screen, bottom of your grid. Okay, so the recent invoice, there is no invoices got created in last 24 hours, but here you can see there is an option. If you go click on this option, it gets changed. 24 hours to 3 days it got changed. Once I click over there, it moved to 5 days and 7 days, and then it should come back to the 24 hours. So which means the recent invoices you can track at various levels: 24 hours, 3 days, 5 days, and 7 days. Okay, so once the invoice is created, that invoice will be shown up in the recent dashboard. Okay, so what is this hold is? Holds is another process which is available in the Oracle applications. Okay, so we'll discuss in detail while we are working on holds and releases. But holds is nothing but stopping the process, be it invoice creation or be it payment process, due to various reasons. Due to various reasons, maybe those are reasons, maybe those, what are those reasons which means the validations. Okay, so if the process fails any of the validation, the invoice will be stopped from the booking process, the payments will be stopped from the generation process. So what, where does the transaction will be put once it is restricted in the booking process? It will be put on hold, which means it is just stopping you from further continuing on the transaction. Maybe it is invoice or payment. Okay, there are various types of holds which we will be seeing, maybe the manual holds or system holds. We will see that while we are working on holds and releases. Okay, the approval tab, what it gives you is the, see, one approval is the one of the uh, action, one of the process that you will be doing on your invoice booking process. Okay, so while you are booking an invoice, while you are creating an invoice, that invoice has to be go for the approval in general. Okay, so then what are the types of invoices that you create? You create a manual invoice or with PO or without PO, right? There may be a condition like the PO invoices which gets created against to PO may not be required approval because the PO purchase document already goes into approval. Okay, so only the invoices are which gets created or which are getting booked in your application without any PO has to go into approval. Okay, let us say the user Apple created an invoice, it has to be approved by his manager. Okay, all those invoices will be pulled and will be displayed under the approval info tab. Okay, the prepaid is, the term itself is clear, right? Prepaid is, which means the advance payment to the supplier, right? As part of the procurement, as part of the procurement, the supplier may request you to pay in advance. Once you make the payment, then only I'll make you the I'll ship the goods, right? In that case, you will be creating a separate invoice type which is prepayment. So all those invoices will be pulled and displayed, pulled into your this bucket, this info tile prepaid. Okay, and there is an refresh button as well. Once you click on refresh, the transactions which falls under all these buckets will get refreshed. Okay, this is how the dashboard looks. Once you click on your invoice, this is how the dashboard looks, and these are the various info tiles which are available. Dashboards or buckets, whatever you call, are available on the application. And once you click on the corresponding input tile, it go and displays the respective transaction which falls under that info tile or bucket. Okay, so the next step for you is to create an invoice. Okay, how do you create an invoice? Just go into the task panel. So there are various options that you can see on the task panel. There is an create invoice, create invoices from spreadsheet, which is creating an invoice from the Excel, create recurring invoices, manage invoices to query the existing invoices which gets created, right? Validate invoice is one of the invoice creation processing option. One of the option is the validate invoice. What happens when validate it does validate certain conditions. Okay, we'll see while we are creating an invoice. Okay, so just go and click on create invoice. So this is how your invoice work area looks like. Okay, since we are almost reached 9, we'll take it in the next session, and we'll try to create an invoice. Okay, we'll have a logical stop here for today.
Tirupati, can you please